Welcome to Whisper and Wonder, where soft stories meet soft voices. You're listening to Hello, How Long Has This Been Going On? Episode 6. Let's begin. Tao, who had been so bored earlier, now sprang into action. He looked up a recipe online, jotted down the ingredients, and got dressed to go out. Braised beef called for fresh shank, and lots of herbs and spices, bay leaves, star anise, cinnamon sticks, cardamom, fennel seeds. The little supermarket nearby probably wouldn't have everything. So Tao decided to go to a large chain store 2 kilometers away, one he hadn't visited since moving here. For once, he forgot about the looming presence of the novel's protagonist. He forgot he'd been slowly shrinking his world in an effort to avoid the plot. As dusk neared, the fog began to lift. A soft red glow seeped from behind the clouds. The people on the street moved through golden light, casting long, delicate shadows. The city emerged from the mist, clear, bright, and awake. That kind of sunset made everything feel lighter. Tao Jay stood at the empty bus stop, watching the sun slowly sink below the horizon. Light touched his face, drawing gentle lines across his profile. And there, he waited, quiet, and at peace. The hypermarket was bursting with variety. Aisles lined with dazzling displays. Tao Jay felt almost overwhelmed, swept up in a long-lost sensation. In his past life, he had always loved wandering big supermarkets. This time, while ticking off items from his grocery list, he tossed every snack and treat that caught his eye into the shopping cart without hesitation. By the end of the trip, he had bought far more than expected. There was no way he could squeeze onto a crowded bus with all these bags. So he decided to splurge and take a taxi home. Sitting in the cab, surrounded by 3 bulging shopping bags, Tao Jay silently regretted his impulsive spending. Still, even in his remorse, a quiet contentment bloomed inside him. He had a vague feeling that Big Bro HR's unexpected appearance had sparked a chain reaction in his life, one he could never have predicted. By the time Tao Jay got home, night had already fallen. Braised beef would take at least 2 or 3 hours to make, far too late for dinner. But he was in high spirits. After munching on a few snacks to settle his stomach, he rolled up his sleeves and got to work, following the recipe step by step. He cleaned the beef, cut it into chunks, blanched it, and soaked it in cold water for half an hour. Then he tossed the meat into a large pot with the prepared spices and brought everything to a boil. The pale pink beef slowly darkened in the rich broth, bubbling away as its aroma filled the kitchen. Tao Jay swallowed involuntarily. He turned the heat down and let the pot simmer until the meat was fall apart tender, soft enough to pierce with chopsticks. He picked out a small piece to taste. It was fragrant, but still a little bland inside. The recipe suggested letting the beef soak overnight to fully absorb the flavors. So that night, Tao Jay went to bed with a rare, quiet anticipation. It had been a long time since he looked forward to tomorrow this much. The next morning, Tao Jay woke early, still drifting from dreams of roaming the open plains with a herd of cows. He ceremoniously peeled back the cling film from the pot, sliced a generous chunk of the marinated beef, boiled a bowl of noodles, and poured the savory broth over it. He placed the beef slices neatly on top, then finished it off with a sprinkle of bright green scallions. As the braised beef and silky noodles met in his mouth, Tao Jay closed his eyes in bliss. Delicious. Even better than the bowl he'd had at the noodle shop that night. Maybe because this one was made with his own hands. He had bought more than 3 pounds of beef yesterday, plenty. The flavor was perfect with rice too. If he were eating alone, it would last for several meals. It would have been nice to share it with someone. The comforting scent of braised beef lingered in the quiet apartment. Tao Jay took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment, letting the thought drift away. It was another idle day. After a thorough patrol of his apartment, Tao Jay decided it was time for a deep clean to welcome summer. He swept and mopped the floors, sorted his closet, reorganized shelves, changed the sheets, and scrubbed the kitchen until it gleamed. Busy hands made time fly. And before he knew it, it was dinner again. He cooked a fresh pot of white rice, stir-fried some greens, and ladled the rich braised broth over rice with slices of tender beef. A simple meal, but absolutely perfect. After dinner, he settled in front of his computer, ready to dive back into his usual internet wanderings. He browsed some forums, watched a few funny videos, when a notification popped up from his social app. New activity. Probably another motivational post from the gym trainer, reminding everyone to book sessions for the new week. He clicked out of habit, and sure enough, it was the trainer. As he scrolled past the post, another profile picture caught his eye. A familiar landscape photo. Post: Big Bro HR. It's honestly a loss to the architecture world that I didn't become an architect. Cute. Image. Tao Jay paused. He hadn't expected someone as straight-laced as Big Bro HR to be playing the trendiest game of the moment. Happy Animal Island was a sandbox-style game known for its open-ended creativity. That freedom, though, could also be a barrier. Many players lost interest without clear goals. So despite being out for years, the game had remained relatively niche, until it suddenly exploded in popularity. Tao Jay had discovered it soon after arriving in this world. Compared to similar games in his original world, this one allowed for a level of precision he'd once thought technologically impossible. He had poured months into it, half a year of spare time exploring and tinkering. His avatar was a little hedgehog, but by the time he wanted to build more advanced structures, working alone had become too difficult. He didn't want to team up with other players, and he wasn't willing to give up everything to restart with a new avatar. So in the end, he simply stopped playing. When HR messaged him asking about cabin renovations, Tao Jay dug up his old screenshots and sent them over. The folder was full of moments frozen in time. The hedgehog's first bountiful harvest. Every house it had ever lived in, each with a different design. The grapevines heavy with fruit in the summer sun. Tao Jay found himself drawn into those still fresh memories, when a message notification broke the silence. HR. Dr. Tao, are you always alone? Tao Jay didn't have time to consider why HR would ask that. His gaze instinctively fell on the fragrant, richly colored beef still sitting on the table. Tao, did you already figure out I'm an introvert? 0.0 inches. At work, people often asked why he never joined group chats or attended any gatherings. He always used social anxiety as a convenient excuse. It usually ended the conversation. People would nod knowingly and drop the topic. Maybe give a light nudge to be more social. But HR didn't let it go. HR, is it because you feel like there's nothing to talk about with the people around you? So it's hard to become friends? Tao Jay tried to type out another excuse, but his fingers froze. He couldn't bring himself to write something dishonest, not to such a sincere question. Flashes of the past year rushed through his mind. The quiet, repetitive days, filled with small, buried feelings he had chosen to ignore, now surging like floodwaters. No, he didn't want to brush things off anymore. He didn't want to dismiss someone who genuinely cared. And he didn't want to keep lying to himself. It wasn't that he had nothing in common with people around him. There was programmer Gua, who once argued with him passionately over a technical problem. Wong Henry, who had invited him to chase dreams together. Even the quirky CEO had tried to show him kindness in his own way. And the little girl he met while jogging in the park, she had cheerfully told him, "See you tomorrow." Since the day he got a second chance, so many people had reached out to him. He just hadn't been ready to reach back. Why couldn't he become friends with others? Even if he was running from the terrifying plot of this novel-like world. That didn't mean he had to shut out every real connection. The chat window sat still. HR was waiting for a reply. His friends list was empty, no one he'd met in real life. The world was quiet, save for the ticking of the clock on the wall. The second hand moved forward, over and over, the only thing in the whole apartment that seemed to be moving. Just like him, drifting through a vacuum. That was when Tao Jay realized. When he had turned down HR's invitation to meet, it wasn't just about avoiding real-world contact. It was that he didn't want to form any real emotional bonds in this fictional, plot-driven world. What if everyone here was bound by a scripted destiny? What if every interaction was meaningless? Could any feeling born in this world truly matter? Were these people, these fleeting moments, real at all? He finally typed his answer. Tao, no, Tao. I just don't feel like any of this is real. It was a vague reply, abstract and hard to respond to. But HR answered right away, just like the night they first met. Those questions that plagued Tao Jay, HR didn't hesitate at all. HR. You're breathing. You exist. You can see this screen and the messages I send. HR. That's what real feels like. HR. Dr. Tao. Even hedgehogs can be hugged. Behind the chat window sat a folder filled with snapshots from a little hedgehog's life, images of peaceful landscapes, soft clouds, green meadows, and hand-built wooden cabins arranged with care and love. But in every photo, the hedgehog stood alone. There were no other animals, no companions, just still scenes of quiet days. Tao Jay had never shared these with anyone. No one knew he even played Happy Animal Island, and he had no friends in the game. Big Bro HR's words brought a strange blur to Tao Jay's thoughts. His messages were always simple, sincere, yet they carried a warmth, a tenderness that resonated deeply. Tao Jay could almost hear the tone in which he might speak, calm, grounded, full of faith in his own words. It was the kind of conviction that soothed unease and doubt. That made people want to believe him. Someone like that was hard to resist. And then there was his quiet perception. Just a few screenshots and a few days of conversation. That was all it took for Big Bro HR to see through to the real him. In the game, he was a hedgehog. In real life, he was the same. If they ever met in person, Tao Jay knew he wouldn't be able to hide it. He would fall for him. Luckily, Big Bro HR was a much older straight man. Tao Jay rubbed the corners of his eyes, forcing back the tears that hadn't fallen in a long time, tucking away the brief fantasy that had drifted through his mind. Tao, thank you. Tao, my island has a bunch of little houses in different styles. Want to come visit sometime? It turned out, accepting someone's extended hand was that simple. HR, sure, let me check my ID. HR, 5,629,168. Add me, Dr. Tao. HR, bear spinning in circles. GIF. Tao Jay chuckled. The silly little bear, spinning in joy, was one of his favorite stickers. Big Bro HR had stolen it straight from him. And with that image, the HR he'd never seen in real life took on yet another trait. Endearingly childish and unexpectedly cute for someone his age. Tao Jay opened Happy Animal Island, which had remained installed all this time. Seeing those screenshots earlier had stirred something. He missed his little hedgehog. As the intro sequence ended, he stepped back into the familiar island. Weeds had overgrown the abandoned fields. Tiny white flowers bloomed quietly in the grass, and a fine layer of dust had settled over the once carefully arranged furniture. But the moment the hedgehog approached, the dust vanished, everything shone again, bright and clean. The game's real-time sync feature was one of its most beloved mechanics. Even when a player logged off, the island kept going. Seasons passed, days turned, and it always waited patiently for the owner to return. Tao Jay opened his friend panel, never before used, and typed in HR's game ID. The profile that popped up showed a grinning brown bear. Username: Dad Koala. Strange, but charming. He was online. The friend request was accepted almost instantly. The scene felt oddly familiar. Somewhere along the way, this old-school internet friend had already become part of his life. Dad Koala. I'm on my way. Sailing now, it's a bit far. Should take 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, a large brown bear appeared on Tao Jay's island, arms full of fruit, beaming at the little hedgehog. The hedgehog bounced forward with excitement. It was barely the size of the bear's head, their difference in size almost comical. The bear set down the fruit, then knelt low, gazing at the hedgehog. Then, gently, it reached out a large paw and patted the hedgehog's spiky back. Blank. Blank. That weekend, spent in this new world, was the most special one Tao Jay had ever had. A new week began, per his CEO's arrangement. He had 3 paid days off, just needed to stop by the Game Expo during that time. The CEO had mentioned exploring original game development, but nothing was concrete. No plans, no pitch, everything could change overnight. Before the weekend, Tao Jay was planning to just show up and check the box. But now, his mindset had shifted. The Jinbei Game Expo was one of the more professional showcases in the country. It featured major promo halls open to the public, and business pavilions for developers and companies. Some booths even offered demos of unreleased titles. For anyone interested in the industry, it was a prime opportunity to see where things were heading. After witnessing how advanced game interactions had become, Tao Jay was more than tempted. He'd never been one to stay still. He wanted to create a game that could touch hearts, like Happy Animal Island. The expo would run 3 days, starting Tuesday. Since it targeted professionals rather than casual players, the organizers had scheduled it for weekdays to ease foot traffic. So on Monday, Tao Jay showed up to work as usual, surprising everyone who knew he'd been granted special paid leave. And that wasn't the end of the surprises. The usually distant Tao Jay brought in a box of homemade braised beef, thinly sliced, arranged neatly in a container, soaked in sauce. The moment he opened the lid, the rich aroma filled the office. It wasn't uncommon for coworkers to bring homemade treats, especially after baking experiments. These little surprises broke up the monotony of endless workdays. Tao Jay placed the container on an empty desk near Wong Henry's spot, set out a jar of toothpicks, and in seconds, coworkers gathered in line, drawn by the smell. So good, just like something from a real restaurant. Seriously delicious. Tao, you cook too? Give us a break. Tao, are you single? Are you strict about gender? Ellipsis. Wong Henry, with home field advantage, managed to sneak a few extra slices. Looking longingly, he asked, Tao, got any saved just for me? Tao Jay laughed and pushed his head away. Snap out of it, no extras. Wong Henry pulled back dramatically. Aren't you off today? Why are you here? The expo starts tomorrow. Tao Jay replied, I wanted to get the important stuff sorted today, so I can really focus during the event. Wow, Tao, that's impressively committed. I figured you'd be home resting. Tao Jay smirked. Well, if you stopped sending me tasks, maybe I could. Others nearby overheard and looked over in surprise. The scent of braised beef still lingered, and with it, whatever envy had been floating around seemed to melt away. Tao Jay carried the empty container back to his desk. From the corner of his eye, he caught Shui Hugo pretending to meditate. They made eye contact. For a second, no words. Then Tao Jay casually said, the beef I made was pretty good. Shui Hugo looked like he might be glaring. Tao Jay, unfazed, continued, picked up the ingredients this weekend. Took 2 hours. So tender, so fragrant. Shui Hugo. He turned away, clearly annoyed, but Tao Jay just smiled and sat down, ready to start his day. Before Wong Henry could submit any new demands, Tao Jay used the time to research tomorrow's expo, highlighting the games he most wanted to see and try. That evening, at 6 sharp, he left work. As he walked out with a shopping bag, coworkers called after him, heading out? Hey, Tao, let us know if you find anything cool. Bring more snacks next time. Tao Jay nodded, tapping out of the office. A breeze swept through his routine life, warm with the scent of summer. The fog had lifted. That evening's sunset was especially vivid. With a busy day ahead, he didn't want to waste time. A quick dinner, then back to his desk to finish the research he'd started earlier. He needed to mark the must-see titles and flag any projects potentially connected to the Huo group. He had to be prepared. It would be his first time in over a year attending a crowded public event. Anything could happen. He didn't know what tricks fate had up its sleeve. Nervous, yes, but there was also excitement. The chat icon in the corner of his screen was still silent. The HR who'd played with him late into the night before hadn't shown up at all today. Tao Jay hesitated, then gave in to the growing need to reach out. Tao, I brought homemade snacks for my coworkers today. Tomorrow, I'm stepping into something new at work. Leaving your comfort zone takes courage, and yeah, there's doubt, but once you do it, you feel freer. I think that's how you know it's right. Tao, thank you for what you said last night. Almost instantly, a message popped up in reply. HR, Dr. Tao. I just got to Jinbei. Just checked into my hotel. The weather here is amazing. HR, that's wonderful. HR, Rose. Another default sticker, classic and cheesy. Tao Jay laughed, then picked a better one from his own collection. Tao, here's a flower.jpg. HR, here's a flower.jpg. HR, no stickers on this hotel PC, sad. HR, I'm starting a new area of work tomorrow too. My first official business trip. Tao, you've got this. You'll do great. Tao, rest up and sleep early tonight. HR, okay, you too. Dr. Tao. Tao, Just about to shower and head to bed. Good night. HR, good night. Dr. Tao, sweet dreams, Moon. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Hello. How long has this been going on? If this story made you smile, feel, or pause, consider subscribing to Whisper and Wonder. New episodes every week. Until next time, stay soft and keep wondering.